Rise and Shine YouTube. Today we got a mouse pad review for you. Yes, we got the PE-K, and to my right we have the PD150. Now, yeah, you might see this mouse on here. This is the EpoMaker Carbon X. Honestly, a great shape, great feeling, great clicks. Everything about this mouse for 80 bucks is great. If you want to try this out, I didn't get this for a review. I got it off Amazon for like 80 bucks, so I'll post the Amazon link below if you want to check it out. But back to the carpets, back to the squares. Now, these were sent out from Vaxee for review, and that's what we're going to do. The PE-K is going to be around the same surface as the PD140, from what I know. So that's why they sent this one and not the 140 out. And I have the PD150 to my right. So we're going to talk about both these pads, and there's one clear winner for me. Now, the dimensions on this PE-K is 510 by 500 millimeters, and it's a 3.5 millimeter thickness. And the base has like a nice mirrored finish to it, glossy, mirrored. But the base doesn't move at all. Like on your desk, the base does not move unless you want it to move, right? So you can pick it up, move it super easily. But under your arm while you're playing, you're not going to feel it. Now, why is it 510 by 500? Well, the horizontal movements are going to be slower than the vertical, right? The vertical versus horizontal, right? You're going to have a better stopping power. Not a better, but you're going to have a quicker stop to your horizontal movements than you will to the vertical. Now, they made this for those vertical track heavy games, right? But in my opinion, I still wouldn't really categorize this pad as something that's really good for tracking, because while it is a little slower horizontal than vertical, I would still put this pad in something like a balance to control setting. For me, I like speed pads, right? One of my favorite speed cloth pads still today is the Vaxee Ryse. Really haven't found too many pads that like can compete with like the OG Vaxee Ryse, not the V2. And when it comes to tracking, I feel like for me, so for when I was using this in like Overwatch and stuff like that, I tend to put more pressure down on my mice than anybody else, because, well, my whole hand is on the mouse. I pretty much palm grip all my mice, or it's like a relaxed claw grip for the most part. But starting with that kind of grip, I do have more force on the mouse, more pressure, between the skates and the surface than more people who are fingertipping. So I already have more weight on the mouse than a lot of people who fingertip. So when I start digging into the pad, it's going to slow down more and more versus somebody who fingertips and is using like fast skates, right? These are pretty fast skates. These are the Obsidian Airs, right? But this still is a very, very like more controlled pad than it is balanced, right? So faster vertical, slower horizontal. But under pressure, right? What I like to do is that S movement. So I'm actually pushing down on the mouse. And when that direction changes, like at the very peak of that curve in the S, that is how I kind of determine like how much tug I'm going to get when I'm actually tracking somebody. Because you're never just tracking left and right, right? Sometimes you are, but at most of the times you're tracking up, down, left, right, in a circle. Like your mouse is constantly moving in different directions. So with this S movement, that directional change at the curve, you do get a slight more tug than I like. You get more slowness down when you start changing directions versus just tracking left and right or up and down. So for me, I would like to see this pad to be faster, and just more balance between the X and Y axis, right? But skate wise, Obsidian Airs are very, very good on this pad. You get a little bit of texture on your skates. We're going to go through different skates now, though. You got the Ultra Glide Control. These have around the same kind of speed feel, maybe a tiny bit slower than the Obsidian Airs, right? Under directional changes, you still feel that nice kind of tug between the change So like the pad wants to keep your mouse moving in this direction until you change. You got the Magic Ice from Unusual Way Sports, right? This has less of that directional change kind of slowdown. So if you want a little more openness to your pad, the Magic Ice dots are really nice. We'll talk about the Logitech full form skates, right? These are their stock skates. This one actually has, in my opinion, a better feel between directional changes, which is wild because they're Logitech skates. But Logitech skates right now are actually pretty good, right? For me, this is more consistent than the three above for directional changes. Now, it does feel slow overall, but it's consistent, right? I'm not really getting too much tug. I get a little bit here and there, but under pressure, under just weight and moving, it still feels very consistent. So you get a slower overall feel, but in my opinion, you get a better consistent feel with the Logitech stock skates. Yeah, that's crazy. You got the Jade Airs, right? The Jade Airs are, in my opinion, more open than the Obsidian Airs altogether. Less tug on directional changes, right? So if you want a faster skate, then like the three above, well, the Magic Ice are nice and open, but if you want like a good consistency too, the Jade Airs are a good option. Plus, this is around a 60-gram mouse, so you get a heavier mouse, but you still get a good kind of speed to it. And then we'll talk about glass skates. So we won't go too much skates, but the glass skates, these are the control variant of these super glides. These are the smaller version of them. And honestly, these are my favorite skates for this pad. These are nice. They're open, right? You don't really feel that difference between X and Y. And you get even though it doesn't look like a faster feel, in motion, that's why I hate doing like those small little glide tests, because they don't portray what the pad's going to feel underneath while you're actually using the mouse. So this is the faster option if you want to pick up these Super Glide dots to control. I'll also put that below. You can get them off of Amazon as well. But you're going to get a more open feel left and right, up and down, under pressure, very consistent. No, not really any slowdown at all. But it just feels good, right? A slight texture to them. These are faster than the speed version, just primarily because of the surface of the skate. The speed version was, I think, too smooth, but it felt a little muddy underneath it, while the control version is much, much more open. So altogether, this pad isn't a bad pad. It just doesn't work for me because of the difference between the horizontal and vertical movements. We will talk about the PD150 here in a second because I think that's a much better pad. But if you want something, and if you're playing something that is more vertical heavy, you want something that is like on the kind of like the slower side of pads, but leaning towards balanced, the PE-K is a pretty good surface, pretty good pad, just not for me. Now, let's talk about the PD150. Now, this pad really surprised me. This guy right here. Now, this is the smaller version. Let me pull up to see what the actual sizing of this one is. This one is going to be... Let me just pull it up real quick. So, while I'm pulling it up, this is, once again, a pretty smooth feeling surface on the skin. On the skates, it's nice and smooth, but the faint texture to it. But I would still put it in the category of like a smooth, like a very smooth, like carpet control, right? So with this sizing, the PD150, you have the, let's see what the size. So this one's a 480 by 400. And honestly, I didn't find myself wanting more like pad. I didn't find myself moving off the pad. I also don't use a super slow sense, so I can kind of play around with it. But when it comes down to it, This is probably one of the better surfaces in a cloth pad of the year. And I don't see this getting the love that it should. I feel like this is such an underrated pad. And while every other reviewer is hyping every other pad out that keeps coming out, I'm going to put the PD150 at the top of my list for 2025. This pad is quicker than the PE-K. It's more consistent. Vertical, horizontal, vertical are pretty much the same, right? They feel identical. You don't get any difference between speed. This is the 480 by 400. It does come in a 500 by 500, and this is their edgeless mouse pad. There are no stitching, and the base, yes, it gets dirty because this thing is a heavy pad, and this sticks. This, like, I can't even get this to move by pushing it like I can the PE-K. This is one of those pads where once you put it on your desk, it's staying. It's not moving. This is also a 5.5 millimeter thickness pad, so it's a pretty thick boy. But since it's an edgeless pad, you don't really feel that thickness to it, right? Your arm does raise up a little bit, but it almost feels level to the desk in the way that there's no, like, it's such a gradual decline to the edgeless onto the desk. It's actually really, really well done. The surface, or not the surface, but the base is a very firm base, right? So this is going to also be another pad where if you're using dots, the dot skates are not going to sink in, but the directional changes between this and the PE-K are much more open and less tuggy. So in motion, when I was using this, I felt way better tracking wise, especially in Overwatch, right? Tracking a Mercy, going to heal like a soldier or pocket heal a Genji, right? It felt so good to track a Mercy through the sky, and it just feels good to use in game because it is now like you don't really get a tug back and forth, right? With this kind of movement here, you do get a slower moving feel, but you don't get that disgusting muddy tug to it, which I love. Obsidian airs are fantastic on this pad. They're pretty open, pretty quick. Silver foxes, yes, like I said, don't mind the skate orientation. It works, whatever. This is also a it's kind of a weird feeling because sometimes it almost like the directional changes when you go down, it like slips. So I might change the top into the dots too, which I'll probably will just to make it more even. But this is a nice feeling left and right. A tiny bit of tug to it, but it's still a nice quick open feel. You got Logitech stock skates. Now this is on the slower side versus the two, but it's very consistent. Putting pressure down, you don't really get any of that directional tug, but it's nice. I'm actually very surprised with these stock skates for Logitech, even though people say they're disgusting. I haven't found the need to change these. I also have another 2C that uses dots, but that's getting sent to truck to get a lightweight base made for it, and we're going to kind of hopefully make that like the lightest 2C ever. But this feels very good. Stock skates are nice, even though this comes to a very, very quick stop. In motion, it just flows. And then we'll go to the glass skates that I showed on the PE-K. This is also one of my favorite feeling skates because it makes the pad just way more open than any of the other skates that I've used. S movements are actually very quick, right? Even under pressure, there's no tug at all. There's no slowing down. This is what I would use. If I were to main this pad, I would use these Super Glide control skates on it just to open up the surface a little more, right? You see that it does still stop on a dime, but under motion, it is probably the faster setup that you can choose. Now it's also going to depend on what kind of mouse you use, because if you use something like a Zowie with those glass skates, you might feel a little slower. But also Zowie with the Jade Airs, you get more of that slow down and a directional change, right? Just because also the mouse is heavy, and when you push down a little bit, it's just going to cause that slow down even more. But all in all, This is probably, I'm going to say it, my favorite edgeless mouse pad. I love the Molten Edge pads, but this is like on a firmness level that is like, this is a hard pad. This also has less give than the PE-K. Even the PE-K is very firm. This is just hard, all right? There's no give, zero give. There is everything about this pad that keeps it consistent, and they're going to have other variants, right? The PD140 is going to be slower. The 160 that they're going to be making, the 170, it's just the 50, 60, 70, 40, that's the speed, and the 1 is the firmness level. And then you have the plus, which is going to be the bigger size. So you have a lot of different options coming down the road from Vaxee, but I plan on picking up the 170 because it's going to be their fastest edgeless pad, and it probably will be like the last kind of cloth pad that I'll probably ever use unless something crazy comes out. It is what it is. But Vaxee made an amazing pad with this PD150. I wasn't a fan of the PE-K, but if I were to choose one cloth pad to use, it would be this pad. So if you want to try it out, go try it out. The let's see how much they are. The 480 by 400, all right, is a $49.99 pad, and the PD150 Plus is $59.99. Now they're pretty expensive, right? I mean, I would stick to the $49.99 one. It's honestly a good price for this pad. It's not $70, it's not $80. I don't need the 500 by 500. Would I like the 500 by 500? Oh, 100%. But I don't need it, right? So save an extra $10 by going down in size. For me, it's perfectly fine. Other than that, Vaxee sent out some banger of a pads, and the PD150 is right now my current favorite cloth pad. So if you found this video to be a good kind of educational and a good kind of learning experience on how this pad feels, hit that like, hit that subscribe, right? We got some more videos coming down the road. I'm going to have a little video on the return from Midori, which will be a little disappointing, but I'll tell you why. And we got some more mice coming in, and we got a bunch of eSport Tigers pads. So that's what's coming down the road. But I love you guys. Rise up. God bless, and we'll see you for the next one.